start up there. Let me start recording. There we go.
Les, why don't you start, matriarch?
I think it's a great idea. I've been writing for many years, and I've written in absolutely every format you can possibly imagine. And I was a New York Times bestselling mystery author, writing about crime, writing about addiction, and from a law enforcement point of view. And then in the teen years, many years ago, when Lindsay became interested in Lindsay.
You can say it.
I always stumble over the teen addiction part of it. But I changed my focus from writing about crime and addiction from a law enforcement point of view to a saving people point of view. And that was where Lindsay comes in. When Lindsay went into recovery, we saw that the biggest story in America was really all about drugs and addiction and how ugly it all was. And we wanted to tell the story of recovery because we still believe that recovery is the biggest untold story in America. So, Lindsay, do you want to go on and talk about what we've done for the last 12 years and why we wrote our book?
Sure, absolutely. So, yeah, we're a family that ultimately everyone in the family went into some kind of recovery, which was wonderful and very unusual. And as I got sober and got older and got a stronger grip on that sobriety, we are social activists, generations of social activists in this family. So I always knew I had a bit of a social responsibility. And once I got sober, my mom we'd already started blogging about recovery and what it was like to quit drinking and that kind of stuff. So we built a website called Reach Out Recovery, and that has taken on a life of its own over the years. Millions and millions of people have been on that website, and we do articles about relationships, behavioral health, and obviously recovery. And we made a couple of documentaries, one actually on teen programs, premiered on PBS. And what we learned in the making of that documentary is that mentorship works. And there are a lot of things that are actually working for people. So as our story continued, we realized that as writers, the best thing we had to offer was not only telling our own story, but how we recovered. And as time went on, what we realized we were really experts at are taking this kind of heavy self-help information and making it a little bit more user-friendly. So I work in a lot of at-risk communities, gang rehab. I've done a lot with Homeboy Industries, women getting out of jail, Boys and Girls Club kind of places. And what we really realized is that people needed tools. They needed tools and information that they were going to be able to use. So yes, what we're experts at is taking that very heavy information and making it usable for everybody.
Yeah, I love it.
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I love it. I think that's an excellent POV. I've actually got one of my best friends who lives in Michigan, who's chronically been in and out of rehab and now is there again. So that's something that's very close and personal to me. So yeah, kudos.
And so there's a story to recovery. It's not a straight line. It can go in lots of different ways, but if people start to understand what the journey's about and that success doesn't look the same for everybody, that's when a lot more compassion and understanding come around alcoholism and addiction. So with the mother-daughter book, so we didn't speak for 4 years, actually. We got into such a bad way.
If I can interrupt real quick, and I hate stepping on my soundbite, but if we could just back up a little bit, and can you sort of unpack what you think one of the biggest misconceptions is around addiction, around recovery? Yeah.
So I'll say it. I'm the addict, so I'll say it from my point of view, and then I'll let my mom say it from somebody who quit drinking to support an alcoholic, but very much deals a lot more in the Al-Anon world. So this is what I think. I think historically we've been set up to believe that 30 days can fix this problem. So people have this idea, well, I'll go to rehab and I'll get fixed. And certainly at 21, that's what I thought. I thought 30 days, I'm fixed. Like, what more do you want? And the reality is, to get sober and stay sober requires kind of a recovery lifestyle. And that's what we write about and we talk about. And it's not just saying, hey, I'm going to get sober and never touch alcohol again. It's saying, hey, I'm going to create a life where I'm happy and I'm healthy. I have lots of other things in my life to do other than just drinking alcohol or taking drugs, coping mechanisms that make me happy and healthy. And as you go on and you build a life that is filled with happy, healthy things, including recovery support groups, including therapy, including self-help, as the years go on, you can become a different person. The idea that in a few months you can change from having a lifestyle of being an addict for 10 or 20 years to being a happy, healthy person in recovery, it's ridiculous. It takes months, if not years, to change habits, learn new techniques, and basically learn how to cope with life. Because many of us are drinking or drugging because on some level inside, there's a piece missing and we're trying to cope with life. So that's my
Okay.
thought. She's
Yeah.
ready to go.
Yeah.
First of all, you heard me stagger over the words that my daughter was an addict as you started this interview. And what that shows is that even after all of these years in recovery, there's so much stigma associated with being the mother of an addict or being an addict that it's actually hard to say the word sometimes. But what I need to say, what I want to add to what Lindsay has said is that using alcohol and using substances, really all kinds of substances, changes brain function. It changes your brain. So, you have to imagine that when somebody goes in, like your friend goes into rehab and is going into rehab with the assumption that that even 6 months will fix something that has changed a brain is unrealistic. So fundamentally, in order to change your brain, it takes a couple of years to heal brain function and to bring brain function back to a different state. It takes a couple of years. And I think that's one component that people aren't thinking about. This is your brain. Your brain has been damaged and hurt. And in order for your brain to get better again, you have to create new brain patterns. And this is what we talk about in the mother-daughter relationship makeover. In any kind of relationship or anything that you do on a regular basis, in order to change, you actually have to change your brain function. Now, I want to add the other component is, how is your family treating your addiction? So in many cases, when Lindsay went into recovery, they were teaching her that she needed to abstain from drinking, even if people were drinking around her. And that sort of gave the family the idea that they could continue drinking because it was up to her. It was up to her to be able to manage her sobriety. Now, I think that that's totally wrong. In my case, I was a journalist, and so my interest was to go to an AA meeting to see what it was like, because I wanted to see, I'm going to report, what is it like for these people to give up the thing they love most in the world? So it's like giving up a lover or giving up your very best thing. And I have to say, at the time, I loved my martinis. I'm not going to lie. I loved my martinis, and I was very famous for creating new and wonderful martinis for my parties. So Lindsay grew up with this, grew up with a martini mom. But so I went to this AA meeting, and I was listening to people, and I thought, I've never fallen down. I've never had an accident, car accident. I've never had a DUI. But I do drink every day, no question. And at the end of this AA meeting, I heard some people who were, sounded a lot like me.
Yeah.
And at the end of the meeting, they said, is there anybody here who'd like to join this way of life? So I raised my hand, I took a sip. I'm not kidding. And I thought, anybody can stop for 3 months. I'll stop for 3 months. and I'll see what it's like to give up the thing that you love, right? I'm going to
Mm,
see what it's like in my own life with my own friends. And I found that society didn't love my not making my martinis anymore.
yeah.
And there was a lot of you're no fun anymore. What's wrong with you? You know, having to explain why you're not drinking. And of course, I lost a little weight, and at the end of 3 months, no, I'm very shallow. At
Mhm.
the at the end of 3 months, I never went back. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not technically an alcoholic in the sense that I can't stop, but most people can't do what I did. But I did it because I really realized that if when I was able to speak the same language with Lindsay, so she was talking AA language, 12-step language, and I didn't know what she was talking about. And
Yeah.
not only that, but I found her very irritating. You
Yeah. Oh,
know,
wow. Why a mother who finds her daughter irritating? Okay.
isn't that a new idea,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I found her irritating because she was, she was throwing some blame my way, right?
Mm,
So when I went into the program with her, I began to speak the same language. I knew what she was going through. I knew how other people were treating her in recovery because they were treating me the same way. And we were able to communicate on a better level
yeah.
immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. No, Lindsay, I had a professor when I went to business school who was very open and out front about his struggle with alcoholism. And when everyone was going to, party and hang out with the professors, he said, Professor such and such, let's have a drink. And he said, look, it's easier for me to abstain than it is to moderate. So I'm sort of, if you don't mind, is there sort of a backstory that you have that might have, and then I was married to someone who had an addiction problem. So again, it's very, very near and dear. My father, same thing, very, very, very near and dear. And I've got vices too, so I don't want to act like I'm holier than thou. What is it like on your own personal journey, your own story, to sort of struggle with that? What would you say? In other words, I guess a better question, what would you say to people who say to you, just don't do it, just abstain, just say no?
That is a concept that is limited. It dismisses the idea that alcoholism is a disease. So what my mom was talking about is you can desperately want to put down alcohol and drugs more than anything else. Every night, I'm never doing this again. I'm never doing this again. I promise. And the next morning, your brain and your body chemistry is like, hey, hey, wake up, wake up. We need to feel better. We need to feel better. We need to feel better. And that's what an alcoholic is hearing and an addict. Make me
Yeah,
feel better. Make me feel better. So I think it isn't a willpower issue. It's an issue of having to make a decision of wanting to live in a different way and then being willing to do whatever it takes to do that. And I think it's very easy to want to do something. I think it's very different to take the time and the energy and actually go through it. It's hard.
yeah,
I think that's the other thing. I want to be honest and say it's hard. But Mom, I want to finish one thing. This is what I would say. For many, many years, being an addict, especially in a high functioning, high status family like mine, my father went to NYU Law full ride and he was a corporate litigator, and my mom was a novelist, and we lived in New York City, and I went to Riverdale. And, so for a long time, there was so much shame. Like, don't tell anyone this is wrong with you. Don't tell anyone. That's what it was like in my 20s. And then when I came out as an advocate, and some people in Washington actually took an interest in me and helped me become a recovery advocate. And I went into prisons and I started doing all of this stuff. So what I would say to anybody who is struggling is that when you do the work and get to the other side, at 46, actually, I have turned my biggest deficit into my biggest asset. So I'm the president of the Palos Verdes Peninsula Rotary. My mission is teen mental health and recovery. You know, I have brought these issues into organizations that weren't really looking at gang member recovery. And so I'm incredibly proud. And that's what I would say. If you can get through it and get to the other side, there is a life that you are so proud of and you are able to help other people that it is more worthwhile than anything else you can possibly imagine.
Love it. Love it. Talk to me a little bit about, oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to add something to that?
What I
Leslie?
wanted to add when Lindsay said it's a disease, you have to make a physical choice and a psychological choice because it's not just one thing. It's not just ending the cravings because that's one part of it, but the psychological part of it is that Lindsay was talking about, the willingness to go through the pain of cravings. And Lindsay, we both have cravings. Lindsay and I both have cravings. It's just not alcohol anymore.
It's sugar now.
It's sugar.
It can be solved at the 7-Eleven or Haagen Dazs.
Yeah.
So basically, when you talk about the physical side of it, the cravings, you know, because that's just in your brain. After you get over the withdrawal, the cravings may still be there, but they will go away in 15 minutes. Cravings will go away in 15 minutes if you can distract yourself. But go on. Yeah.
No, so I'm just going to go ahead and move it forward to the exploring the emotional and personality side with regard to, I believe it's conflict resolution. Talk to me a little bit about that. I was super curious about that for various personal reasons, but I'll explain some of my personal reasons a little bit later.
Well, can we do this? I want to talk for 1 minute about revealing your backstory, and then Leslie's going to jump into all of that so that because we made some notes to keep it in order.
Good.
So here's where we start with the 4-step process. It starts with the self-discovery and the revealing your backstory. Because here's the thing. When you go to the doctor, what's the first thing they ask you? What's your family history? Did your dad have cancer? Did your mother have breast cancer? These are very important questions that people need to know the answers to so that a medical professional can do the right tests and treat them properly. So you're in this terrible situation with your mom or your daughter. You're fighting like cats and dogs. You can't get along. And I mean, we could not be in the same room without screaming at each other at one point. So if you decide, all right, we're going to try and deal with this and figure out who we are, what happened here, if you don't actually understand what your mom's mental health history, what her mom's mental health history, you know, there are things like, so we're Jewish, you know, the family history of families that have been in the Holocaust. If you don't actually understand what's gone on in your family and the potential trauma that's been passed down through generations, then you might be struggling with something in 2024. Wow, I have anxiety watching the news. Why am I so upset watching what's going on in the Middle East and Ukraine? Well, guess what? You may have had an ancestor that was in a situation like that, and on some level in your DNA, you are experiencing what they experienced. So the first thing we want people to really understand is, who am I? Who is my mom? And what information can I get that will help me understand our backstory? And now, next most important thing, communication and personality style. So if you want to ask your question again, Leslie.
Yeah. So would you, epigenetics, love it. Talk to me a little bit about the process that you all took with regard to exploring the emotional aspects of each other and the different personality styles. Are we talking about sort of Myers-Briggs, DISC, Big Five, or are we talking about something that's just a little bit more informal, like tell me who you are? How did that go?
I think what we need to talk about when we talk about our emotional style and our parenting style, when we look at this, what was your mom like? What was she like? Was she cold? Was she warm? How did she communicate with you? Was she loving and hugging? Was she wary? Your communication style, what we know is that a lot of the problems that people are having with their relationships have to do with misunderstandings and miscommunications, right? So when a mom and a son, or a mom and a daughter, or a father and a daughter, you may not as a child be able to interpret what's coming at you. Why is that look on my mom's face? Why does she say this to me? What these things hurt me. And also remember that things that moms and their children remember the same incidents in completely different ways, because they're taking different things away from it. So a mom may have extremely good intentions, but she may be so worried and anxious about juggling work and juggling maybe an alcoholic in the family, or a husband, or work, that when she's relating to her child, what the child is seeing is anxiety and unhappiness. And that may be translated as my mom doesn't love me. So Lindsay, you want to talk a little bit about communication
Well, I
styles?
think what's funny is I don't think we'd ever thought about our own personality or communication styles before we started this. And we would have accused the other one of having personality traits that we have. So I'm not kidding. When we started this process, I said that my mom was the most controlling person on earth, and she said that I was the most controlling
Yeah.
person on earth.
Yeah.
So we've had to really, so yeah, you have to kind of look at yourself, and here's what we did. We broke it down into like the basic personality styles and communication styles. So, we talk about cool and detached as a personality style versus roller coaster versus empathic versus hysteric and anxious, perfectionist, or the perfect one, balance. So we do give people some words because we want them to be able to define what they're looking at. My mom thought that she was cool and detached, and in some ways she very much was, but in other ways she was hysterical and anxious. And you know what? One of the confusing things, and this is why we want everyone to answer these questions for themselves, things change. The mother that she was when I was a drug addict is not the mother that she is today.
Yeah.
So the mother that she was at 35, trying to manage 2 small children with no help, no mother of her own, no female relatives. When I was growing up, I was really angry at her. But as an adult now, I'm able to see she had no help.
Yeah.
She was a young woman in the 70s, trying to have a career and a husband and kids. So, I feel very differently about some of the ways that she was with me then now. So, and we talk about the daughter personality styles too, the peacemaker, the family clown, who's loud, who's quiet. We do want you to be able to identify.
And you were so sullen, Lindsay. We remember we were talking about what is the daughter like? What is a daughter like? Well, when girls go into their teenage phase, they're very often sullen, argumentative,
But
critical,
here's the thing. Here's the thing.
complaining.
In some cases, that's absolutely normal. And part of what we're trying to do in the book is look at what's normal, what's not normal. For
Love
me, I was reacting to the death of a friend, the suicide of another friend, the loss of a grandparent. What had turned into a sullen, angry teenager in me was not typical. It was
Yeah.
not normal. So that's part of the whole thing here, is really being able to identify, like, do I think I'm just funny and say a lot of things? Like, sometimes I'll say something, and if somebody's feelings are hurt a little bit, I'll be like, I'm so sorry. I say things off the cuff all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But, I know that about myself. I put my foot in my mouth. So is it an off the cuff thing? Or when I was younger, when I was a bit more combative, am I actually trying to instigate something with somebody?
Yeah.
Now I know the difference.
Yeah, I love it.
Oh,
I always have to ask for forgiveness, to charge it to my head and not my heart. Leslie, I've got a fastball for you right down the middle. Did you, from your perspective, feel like as a mother, when your relationship with your daughter was tumultuous, did you feel like you consistently validated her perspective or her feelings or her concerns?
that's a great, great question. No, I didn't. I didn't. And that is one of the major, major problems between parents and their children, whether it's fathers or mothers. I wasn't able to listen to what Lindsay was saying to me and be able to ask her the right questions and then listen. She would talk to me or say something to me, and I was already forming my answers that would be that would not that would not validate what she was telling me. And I should have been able to say, I hear what you're saying. Let's explore this further, instead of saying, you can get over this, it's not their fault, or whatever it is. Validating somebody else's feelings, whether it's a spouse or whether it's a child, is one of the most important relationship tips and tools that a person can have.
Love it. Love it. Okay. I definitely want to have, I know we're getting close to time. I definitely want you all to have a chance to provide whatever talking points that you all have already prepared. So I just want to put that out there. So just in case you all might be getting a little bit anxious with regard to time. Are we ready to move on to the understanding conflicts and triggers, or is there something else that we should unpack, if you will?
No, we're good.
We're
Okay.
good.
Kidding. Sorry, changed my mind. Follow up here, Leslie. What made you change your mind? What made you change your actions with regard to validating your daughter's feelings?
Ooh, that is a good question.
That's a great
Yeah,
question.
it is a good.
What changed my mind? Well, my daughter left me. She left me in a terrible, terrible situation when we were about to have a show that we had produced and she was the star of, was going to be on PBS, and she packed up in the night and she took off. So that shows how angry she was at me. She was very angry at me. And what was the question? Jeez, I
What made
backed
you
up too
change your
far.
behavior and
Okay,
or
so
yeah,
she left me. She was gone. I was angry. She was angry. It was a very difficult family business and family relationship situation. And in the 4 years that we were separated, I did a lot of therapy and a lot of work on myself. And if we hadn't had that break, I wouldn't have been able to say, oh my God, I played a part in this. So I think what's really important and the way that you can change is to be able to start, first of all, get some help so that other people can give you perspective on what it is that is getting in the way of your doing better. And also do the work to say, oh, who am I really? How am I acting? What did I do to her? What could I have done better? So that when we began to make up again, and we had a lot of triggers, and we can talk about the triggers, the fact that she felt that I was nagging. She felt that I didn't give her enough responsibility in the business. She felt that I was dismissive of her. And some of the things that she was saying were absolutely true, but I felt that she wasn't ready to take responsibility in her recovery space. But being able to be separated, have her go away, and my understanding that if I ever wanted her back, I needed to be a different kind of person. So Lindsay, you want to talk about your change?
Do you want me to?
I mean,
yeah,
we both, sometimes you have to get enough distance from the person that you're fighting with to be able to get a new perspective on what your conflicts are. So for me, I had to say, all right, who was I really? And how can I be better? How can I be better?
So the only thing I would add, because the point of the book and the point of everything we do is not to put blame on other people, but to look at who we are, what we brought to the table, and how we can be better, whether or not we get back together with that person or not. So the same thing happened to me. I left New York City in the night with one suitcase. I moved into an Airbnb. I was in very little contact with much of my family for a couple of years. And what happened was, when there's nobody to fight with, you really have to stop and look at yourself. And I did the same thing. I went into programs, I went into therapy, I went into trauma, and I began to see who I really was and what I had brought to the table. And, part of 12 step, and I mean, we're talking about it publicly here, but I think it's okay, is to become accountable for who we are and what we brought to the table. So there came a moment when I wasn't angry anymore. And same thing, through the help of other people.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Love it. Okay. What do you think prevents people from holding themselves accountable, and how can they sort of change those behaviors outside of therapy, if you will?
Because they're looking at the other person. They're looking at how the other person is making them feel, instead of looking at they're looking outside of themselves instead of inside of themselves. So I maybe look at you and say, what's your resting face? Are you looking at me in an angry way? I'm going to blame you. If you say something that's off the cuff that you don't mean to be hurtful to me, I may take it as an insult, and that will bring my griping self to the fore. So instead of looking at myself and saying he's tired, or he didn't mean it, I'm looking at, how did you hurt me, and what can I do to blame you for it?
I just want to throw something in. I think it's hard to see ourselves.
Yeah, it is.
I think it's really hard. I've been in relationships for years that I knew something was a little off, but to end the relationship and move out, and it took years to get it sorted. And that I think, listen, we live in a world, look at advertising, look at TV, society. We're meant to show that everything's perfect and we're great. And if we're vulnerable or something's wrong with us, we're going to get put in the corner and have a pointy hat put on our heads. So I think, one, it's not normal. We're not taught to look at ourselves. I think it's not a traditional way of thinking. So I don't think people normally, the first reaction is to think, well, what did I do?
Yeah.
It is for some people, but for many it isn't. And unfortunately, I think things sometimes do have to come to a head for somebody to think, well, what did I do to deserve this? Or, and here's the other thing. Some people aren't capable.
Yeah. Willing plus able. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the other piece of this. Somebody has to want to see what their part is. And I'm not even going to say sadly, it's just life. There are just a lot of people running around who don't want to see the impact of their behavior on other people or the world. And that, again, we talk about in the book. Who are we dealing with here? Somebody who is capable of change and healthy, or somebody who maybe is using or has some mental health issues and simply doesn't have the capacity to be who we need them to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Last topic, if we can have this at maybe 2 minutes, learning to restore the love. How's that work?
I would say that the first thing you need to do is to be able to forgive. And I know you believe in forgiveness. So the first thing that you need to do is to be able to forgive the other person for whatever transgressions you may believe and that they have done against you. That doesn't mean that you can condone what they did, but let go, have compassion for the other person.
Okay, I've been waiting to answer this one. This is the one I've been waiting to answer. So what we want is for mothers and daughters to be happy. We want them to be happy. So we want you to pause the fighting, and we want you to work on creating that happy lifestyle for yourself. What do you need to be okay right now? So this is also my mission with this project is, how can you take care of yourself? How can you help your mental health? How can you come to more understanding about who you are and who your mom is? When we're talking about restoring the love and creating a healthy lifestyle, again, it's like recovery from addiction. You have to recover yourself first. You have to be happy and healthy. And listen, no one's happy and healthy all the time. But what I'm saying is you have to get into that place of being happier and healthier and able to forgive. And there are tons of tools and ideas we put in the book: spirituality, self-help, therapy, groups. There are tons of things you can do to start, just filling yourself up with everything you need, because when you are your best self, then you're going to be able to go out into the world and potentially fix this relationship or start doing the things that will help improve things.
Yeah. Great. Love it. Now, I know it's about mothers and daughters,
Didn't get
but
that.
can this be extended to romantic relationships or any tools in there that we can extend to? Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, we have had male reporters, podcasters, even the guy I did the audio book said, I'm taking this home. I need this for my mom. So yes, all of this applies for all relationships. When we talk about good communication and learning your personality styles, yes, you should have to do this before you get married too. Absolutely. We believe that. So yeah, I think the book can work for anything.
Cool. All right. We've got less than a minute. I'll wrap it up with this. Love both of you. You all are great, brilliant. And I love it from a therapeutic perspective. Last plug here. I just put out a story to local churches trying to match people about what churches are doing to match folks and prepare folks. If there's some buy-in there, would love to share your book with them and make it part of our required reading.
Yes.
So let's
That would
definitely
be
stay in touch.
great.
I usually use Teams and not Zoom, so I'm like, what in the hell is going on with Zoom? So my apologies for that.
Okay.
But yes, please, let's definitely stay in touch. And if you all have follow-up stories, I would love to provide coverage there too.
Thank you so much. What a
Thank you so
pleasure.
much.
Thank
Yes.
you all.
Great to meet you.
Same here. Bye-bye.